Great, and we're live. Welcome everybody to this Hangout on Air. My name is Lisette Sutherland, and I'm extremely excited today to be interviewing Hassan Osman about his new book, Influencing Virtual Teams, 17 Tactics That Get Things Done with Your Remote Employees. So thanks, Hassan, for being here and for letting me take the time to pick your brain and learn more about the book.
Thank you so much, Hassan. Very excited to be here.
So let's start with the first question, which is, tell us a little bit about the book and why you wrote it.
Sure, absolutely. So I just launched the book, in fact, 5 days ago, so it's a very exciting time for me. And just a little bit maybe about myself so you can get a little bit of context about who I am. I'm actually a senior manager at Cisco Systems, where I lead large and complex projects with virtual teams all around the world on delivering projects for Cisco's customers. And so I do this for a living. I basically eat and breathe the topic of virtual teams on a daily basis. And in fact, I'm right here in my home office in Boston, where I do 95% of my work. I do travel sometimes to visit customers, but most of the time it's really working from home. And I've been doing this for nearly 10 plus years. With Cisco, I've been around for nearly 4 years, and before that, I was in management consulting. I've also worked with virtual teams from an entrepreneurship perspective, and so really the book is about all my lessons learned throughout those 10 plus years and boiling them down into a list of 17 tactics that would help managers in large organizations manage their teams. As you probably already know, managing people is probably the hardest thing to do in the world, right? I mean, you can manage your own productivity, you can manage your own workflow, you can manage a lot of things that you do on a personal level, but when you move into managing other people, it's really a different ball game on its own. And this is what the book is about. It's really managing people you don't see and influencing them to get things done, basically, and get the job done that you want to accomplish.
So now, why did you write this book? I mean, it was just to share your lessons learned, or were there particular issues that you were frustrated with that you wanted to say, like, oh, if everybody would just write succinct subject lines, we could go so much further. Was there a why or a frustration that caused this?
Yeah, excellent question, by the way, and the answer is yes. The biggest frustration with virtual teams is miscommunication, right? I mean, the ultimate problem that underlies why projects fail in a virtual team environment is because virtual team members don't communicate well because of the lack of face-to-face interaction, the lack of body language, the lack of facial expressions and what have you from that perspective. And so when you're managing people you don't see, usually the adoption rates of getting things done go down dramatically. And I've worked in a consulting capacity before. I've helped a lot of managers increase their effectiveness of managing virtual teams. And one pain point is really the frustration of having to chase down employees to get things done, to basically stay on top of them, to make sure that things are being done the way they should be. And so that's where really the book came out of. It's how you manage people in a way which is very natural and at the same time very effective. And this is what the book really covers. It really focuses on specific tactics and actions that you can just pick up and say, all right, this is a tactic I'm going to use today. For example, one thing I cover in the book is about how to specifically set deadlines. Usually when you talk to managers, the way they set deadlines with their teams is, all right, I need this done in the next couple of days, or we should get working on this soon. They use words that are very ambiguous and not focused on a specific time and date. And one tactic I mentioned in the book is you really have to be very specific with the time, the date, and the actual time zone that you need to get things done by. To be effective. And so this is really what the underlying problem that the book solves. It's the fact that you don't want to chase employees to get things done. You don't want that sucking up a lot of your time. And by really focusing on specific action steps that you can take, you will increase your team's compliance and adoption rates.
Yeah, I found some of the tips. When I was reading the book, I found some of the tips. I was like, yes, that would really help. Yes, I've experienced that myself, and I know one of those was the one that I brought up, which was the writing the succinct subject lines, which sounds very silly, and also setting deadlines. It all sounds so simple, but I
Right.
think when you get into the heart of it, um, writing a subject line and changing the subject line as the conversation in the email changes so that it's searchable and findable and easy to use and everybody knows where things are, it's just something that does truly help, especially when you're working remotely, because you're trying to bridge the distance of how to be closer and how to talk to each other well. So one question I have is, do you have a favorite tip? Is there something in the book that, like for instance, I have my own favorite tip, but of things that I recommend to everybody, which is working out loud. I love the concept of working out loud, which is, narrating your work and making it observable to others. And so I just get excited. Is there a tip like that in your book?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question as well. So one tip that I encourage people to use that gives you the maximum return on investment for your time is actually tactic number one. I led in the book, and if you go to Amazon, in fact, you can read that tip without having to buy the book because it's part of the look inside feature there. And the title of that tactic is how one word can influence your team, and that word is because. So whenever you need someone to do something, just follow it up with the word because and give a reason after that. And the reason why this works is it's actually based on a study called the Xerox study, which was done back in the 70s. And it was conducted by a couple of psychologists where they wanted to see if people could cut in line in front of other people waiting in line for using the Xerox machine. Xerox machine, for those of you who are not in the US, is basically a photocopy machine. They call it a Xerox machine here just based on the company name. But they basically, conducted that study and had people just say, oh, can I cut in front of you? I just have 5 pages. Other people basically said, can I cut in front of you? I have 5 pages. May I use this because I'm in a rush? And they gave those different sort of justifications behind it. And it turns out that it didn't matter what the justification was after the word because. It was just using the word because that helped increase compliance by around 33%, which is a shockingly high number. So, I first heard about this actually from one of the big books in influence called Influence, the Science of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. And I dug a little bit deeper into this and I kind of read about the original study and it was just fascinating to me. And ever since I started using it, I've actually seen results there. So, whenever you're delegating tasks to your team members, whenever you need something done, whether you're hiring a virtual assistant or it's really someone part of your team, using that subtle word really helps a lot. So
Letting
that would
people
be my
know
favorite.
why you'd like them to do something.
Right, and I think the ultimate reason why this works is because we are trained at a young age that from our parents that saying something like I need you to do this because it makes you grow and become healthy and all that. So you're kind of trained at a young age that the word because kind of helps justify the reason behind it.
Interesting. Another tip you bring up, and I'm not going to give away all the tips, of course, because we want people to read the book, which, by the way, you can be downloaded for free today. So today is the last day that it can be downloaded for free. So I'll
Right.
put up the website in a second to show people where they can download that on Amazon, but you can also just Google manage or Google influencing virtual teams, and you will also find a link. But one of the tips that I really liked was, or that you brought up, was trust equals reliability plus likability. And this is, I think, a crucial thing on virtual teams is the trust, because you have to trust each other. And I think reliability stood out to me because I think that that's one of the main ways you build trust on a virtual team. But the likability actually stood out, and I wanted to maybe ask you to dive into a little bit more of the likability of people. I mean, I've certainly had managers I have not liked. So how do they change this? How do I
Yeah.
change this?
So I'm glad you brought up the subject of trust because trust is a very big component of virtual teams and having effective teams. And the reason why I came up with boiling it down to a very simple formula is because trust is a very nebulous concept, right? You can't, touch it. It's not very pragmatic. It's not an on-off switch where you either have trust or you don't have trust. It's more of a spectrum where you have varying degrees of trust, within a team, within two members of a team, and it's really hard to nail down how you can increase trust within a team. And so, the simple formula of trust equals likability plus reliability helps a lot because, you can increase trust by focusing on one or both of those things. And a lot of people, as you alluded to, really miss out on the likability portion of it. A lot of people focus on the reliability part where, you want to verify skill sets, you want to make sure that people are on top of things and that sort of thing. But the likability part is extremely important. And, based on a lot of research, cognitive psychologists really believe that this plays a very, very crucial role in trusting someone. So, to oversimplify it, people you like or people who like you end up trusting you more. And this is a well-known sort of theory in sales and that sort of thing. This is why they use sales forces that are very extroverted and they love interacting with people and they have a very bubbly character. It's because people who are liked more end up being trusted more, which usually translates to sales or higher productivity. And so from a likability perspective, we tend to undervalue that a lot in virtual teams because it's very transactional. So in a virtual team, usually it's, hey, get things done, let's run with it, here are the action items, please go ahead and work on those and report back in a couple of days and that sort of thing. And we don't focus so much on the people aspect of it or the social aspect where it's really important to build a relationship with the people you're working with. That happens very naturally in a physical world, right? In a co-located space, you have people who interact on a daily basis. And I talk about this in the book. There's something called the propinquity effect, which was a theory brought about by a psychologist, I think, in MIT, that showed that people who are just close together in a physical setting end up liking each other more just because of the daily interactions that they have. So you need to kind of replicate that in a virtual setting, and it's really hard to do if you don't put a concerted effort into it by using, for example, the power of small gives. So we do this usually naturally where, you and I, for example, we interact through email, through Twitter. I send you a quick article and say, hey, Lisette, you might find this interesting. We talked about the green screen behind me just before we started this call, and I'm going to be sending you a link on where you can find that for cheap on Amazon. So those sort of things, the power of sort of small gives, the power of small interactions, sort of like gifting little things really help build the likability factor. And in a virtual team, you really need to spend some effort into focusing on that to help build that trust.
Right, managers can be a lot more deliberate about being generous with their information and the resources that they have, and in terms of building. And I also find the likability an extremely important component to all of this because with a virtual team, you want to be collaborating and bringing each other information very quickly, and it really helps if you like the person, because if you don't like somebody, the chances of you contacting them regularly or interacting with them regularly decreases, I think, based on how likable they are and how likable they aren't. So absolutely. I can imagine this is, so this was a very interesting part of the book that I really enjoyed, that you have these concrete tips like being generous with information and resources. I really thought that was great.
And one thing I wanted to add, in terms of likability, another thing that, again, sometimes this happens naturally in virtual teams, is to get a little bit personal with your team members. And I'm not talking about getting too intrusive where, you're violating any policies or laws or anything like that, but, knowing a little bit about their background, their hobbies, what they like to do on vacation, maybe spending some time up front during the meeting when someone's, kind of, you're waiting on people to join, using that kind of downtime, or maybe at the end of the meeting, just mentioning something about, anything unrelated to work really helps as well.
Great tips. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly for our observers so they can find out where to get your book. Make sure I get it on the screen. We'll start the screen share now. So hopefully people can see this. Here's the website. where you're able to get the book Influencing Virtual Teams. It is free. Maybe if I click here, yes, it'll say it's free on Amazon today. So for one more day, you're able to get the book for free, but it's well worth the download. And I think that they're very solid tactics, things that you can start using tomorrow to make sure that your virtual teams are being managed better to increase the communication. So I'm trying to keep this under 15 minutes so that people will watch it, but I do have a couple of questions about the work with your teams at Cisco, and I'm wondering, because it's a big company, and a lot of people say, oh, I just can't work at a big company, there's too much bureaucracy, but what works at Cisco, and what doesn't work? What have you all tried?
Right. So, I want to preface this by saying my opinions about Cisco are my own and don't represent the company because, obviously it's important to differentiate that. But that's a good question. I mean, Cisco is a huge company. As we talk, it's over 65,000 employees all around the world, and Cisco is one of the biggest telecommuting companies in the world as well. So we actually sell products that help other huge organizations have a telecommuting workforce. We do this through our CVO products, our Cisco Virtual Office products, where I have my phone, my Cisco router, and all that sort of technology that helps facilitate that. And so we rely very, very heavily on a distributed workforce, which works really well for us. I mean, at the end of the day, one big benefit of virtual teams is the access to talent, right? So we can hire anyone in the world, basically, who has access to an internet connection without worrying about specific geography. And when you think about it, that gives a huge competitive advantage to large organizations, especially these days where competition is cutthroat and you really need to stay ahead 10 steps just to survive. So, I think that alone works really well for Cisco as a company. They, started out with a whole telecommuting idea a little bit earlier than other companies, and I think it gave Cisco a huge competitive advantage there. So I think that, from one aspect, is a huge thing that works for Cisco. The second is, our customers are all around the world as well, right? So I can lead a project for a customer in India, or I can lead a customer engagement in Hawaii, even while I'm right here in my office in Boston. And I'd basically be, let's say, managing a resource in India who works for Cisco, and having that person travel to Hawaii or China or the Philippines to conduct that project, and as well as work remotely on that. So I think having that sort of access to talent and having that access to so many different resources around the world really helps Cisco stay nimble and at the forefront of technology.
Yeah, that's actually the part of remote working that excites me the most too, is getting people together from all over the world to solve problems, regardless of location, just getting the best people together to share resources and knowledge and to get things done. So I love that companies are using that to their advantage for innovation and for being agile and nimble in the world. I think it's a fabulous benefit. It's what got me excited to begin with. So then last question, Hassan, which is, if people want to know more about you and the book, where do they go? Where can they find you?
Right, sure. So I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning of our conversation, but I do blog about remote teams and virtual teams. My blog is called The Couch Manager. You can find it at thecouchmanager.com, and you have all my information there, my contact information, my Twitter handle, which is @HassanO. You can also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. My link is on the About page on thecouchmanager.com. And you can find the links to the book as well there. So everything is in one place.
Perfect. So thecouchmanager.com, and I'll make sure to put that in the description of the interview also. So
excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated taking the time, and I'm really excited about your book, and I hope that it does very well. I'll be encouraging everybody to download it and read it and to apply the tips today. Start today, and you could do great things. So thanks again, and until next time, everybody, be powerful.
See ya.